Thank you, Scott, and I know you're going to enjoy, love, and do great at this United States Attorney's job. Everybody that I've had the pleasure to have a hand in selecting, the 94 around the country, most of them fully realize what I believe, and the people who served in the office believe, is one of the great opportunities of a lifetime to be able to participate in that way. And you've had 30 years of prosecuting. You know what you're doing, and we look forward to you. A lot of good things are happening, I think, in our country today, but I just have to take a moment to say I am pleased with the President's nomination for the Supreme Court. Among other things, he's the son of a prosecutor. He grew up with a mom who was practicing closing arguments at the dinner table. He understands and appreciates the value of the work that we do in the law enforcement community. His record indicates that. He's committed to following the oath that judges take. I don't know if you know it, what it is. It's to serve under the Constitution and laws of the United States. Judges aren't above it, they're under it. Their responsibility is to faithfully decide cases according to the law. And I like this idea. Something I've always tried to articulate in the Senate is that judges aren't to be conservative or liberal or political or Democrats. They're supposed to follow the law as best they can. And if they do that objectively day after day, in the long run, the republic will be stronger. The courts will be more respected. And the danger for our courts sometimes, I think, is if people ever become to believe that they're really not following the law, but in advancing agendas that they have, then I think we could lose something that makes America perhaps the greatest country in the world. It's our fabulous legal system. It's good to be with our fellow prosecutors and law enforcement officers to make an announcement about one of the most important issues we face, and that's the fight against the opioid epidemic. I don't know if Governor Sununu is here. I thought I understood he was going to try to be here, but we've talked a number of times about this, talked again today. I remember distinctly a little over a year ago being in New Hampshire at that great rally with some 8,000 high school students. DEA and the governor put it on, and 50 mothers stood before those students. Never forgotten this. And they had pictures this big of their children, sons and daughters they had lost when they stood before those high school students. And it just goes to, I think, in a way that words are difficult to express, how personal this battle over opioids, fentanyl, and heroin, and other drugs are. It's a life and death matter. Wonderful, wonderful young people, but people of all ages are losing their lives as a result of this epidemic. And I want to thank all of our federal officers who are here today with us, who do much to fight opioid trafficking in New Hampshire, across state lines, and even international borders. That includes Brian Boyle of DEA, HIDTA Director Jay Fallon. Jay, we met all of you earlier. Amanda Cahill with ATF, our partners Mike Posanka with HSI, and Robert Garcia at the Border Patrol. We had some nice meetings before this. Both with our federal officers, with the United States Attorney staff leadership, and then we had another meeting with our state and local partners that was this very rewarding. 40+ United States Attorney's offices around this country. We always enjoy, one of the highlights is meeting with our state and local officers who make up 85% of law officers in America. But I got to tell you, we have some especially good news today, and I want to thank our new DEA Administrator, Uttam Dhillon, for joining me on this trip. He is a good friend, someone I've come to admire and respect in a host of ways. He comes and latest responsibilities was at the White House counsel's office. Now, which would tell you that's a quiet job to be the lawyer in the White House in the last year or so. But I got to tell you, he is been a rock solid member of that team. He is a brilliant lawyer, but more than that, he's a very experienced prosecutor whose instincts on drug prosecutions, which he did a great deal of as a prosecutor, are exactly right. We've talked about the issues facing this country. And yes, treatment is important. Yes, prevention and education programs are critical, like the governor and DEA had with those high school students. But I got to tell you, we in law enforcement have a law enforcement role. And the middle name of DEA is enforcement. And we believe that it's wrong and a big mistake to ignore and to allow drug distribution organizations to grow, become more powerful, and not go after them aggressively. And if you take them down, you seize drugs, you seize their money, you put the leaders in jail, you can reduce the availability of drugs, you can reduce the purity of drugs, and you can increase the price of drugs in our streets. And that all, in time, adds to less addiction and less so, Udom, it's great. Thank you for being with me today. And we are inexpressibly proud of our federal officers, but we do know that the vast majority of our law officers in America are at the state and local level. You are the ones in the trenches every day, gathering the street-level intelligence that can lead to national cases and international cases. Most drug cases go international, just a question of following the trail backwards. And I want to give special thanks to Concord Police Chief Bradley Osgood, Manchester's new police chief Carlo Campano, as well as 8 other police chiefs who are here. Colonel Chris Wagner of the New Hampshire State Police, Sheriff Mike Huro, as well as 5 county prosecutors. It's an honor for me to be with you all. We support you. And I know that with the help of these fabulous partners, this United States Attorney's Office is doing a great work. Prosecutors like Georgiana Koneski and Seth A. Frame and Deborah Walsh have brought charges recently against some 50 people involved in distributing fentanyl in this community, including 4 illegal aliens residing in the sanctuary city of Lawrence, Massachusetts. And there can be no sanctuary for drug dealers and fentanyl dealers in this country, in my opinion. Doug Afeeth secured a 20-year sentence for a drug trafficker who had enough heroin to kill thousands of people. And of course, you're achieving success on many other issues as well here. But our shared work of enforcing our drug laws has never been more important than it is today. Today, we are facing the most deadly crisis in America's history. We've never seen anything like this. In 1981, when President Reagan named me to be United States Attorney, we had a cocaine crisis, and it was a big deal. And over the next 15 years, the percentage of high school students using an illegal drug dropped by half. The murder rate dropped by half. But I got to tell you, never at that time did we have anything like 64,000 deaths in 1 year from drug overdoses. This is entirely new and a threat to us. And as you know, this state is at the center of it. Approximately 64,000 people lost their lives in 2016. And that's the highest and fastest increase in death toll in American history. That's the equivalent of more than half the population of Manchester, dead in 1 year from drug overdoses. Meanwhile, millions of people are living with the consequences of a family member's addiction or an addiction of their own. It's incredible but true that for Americans under the age of 50, Americans under the age of 50, drug overdoses are now the leading cause of death. Preliminary data show that the drug death toll continued to rise in 2017. The 64,000 figure was 2016, but at a slower pace, and according to the CDC, Center for Disease Control data through November of 2017, it appears we're beginning to see maybe a peak and even a slight decline. But sadly, New Hampshire knows the consequences of drug addiction too well. From 2013 to 2016, opioid-related deaths here tripled. And in 2016, the Granite State had the second highest rate of opioid overdose deaths in America. It's still hard for me to believe such a fabulous state with such a strong and long history of lawfulness and public safety is finding such a challenge here. I visited Manchester in March, as I said, and saw those students there. I saw the work of the DEA and the federal prosecutors. I believe that that event perhaps will be the beginning of something historic, where we begin to turn the tide in this opioid disaster. It does appear to me that you may have, better than the nation in 2018, improvement in the death toll here. I certainly hope so, Scott, and you know you have our support. It reminds us these photographs of these young children that mothers had, that we are dealing with a human catastrophe that calls for our best efforts. We're talking about people like Eve Tarmy, a 17-year-old high school senior in Rochester, New Hampshire. She was injected with fentanyl by her mom's boyfriend, who later himself woke up but found her dead. Thanks to people in this United States Attorney's Office, he's now serving 20 years in prison. We're talking about the 1-year-old child from Brentwood who got into his father's fentanyl stash, ate some of it, and now is dead. His dad in jail. Unfortunately, there are many more tragic stories like these. The crisis is devastating. We will not stand by idle. We are not going to accept the status quo. We're not going to allow these deaths to continue. President Trump has made it clear that business as usual is over. Ending the drug crisis is a top priority of this administration. He laid out a few months ago at Manchester Community College a comprehensive plan to end this national public health emergency. He has declared it a national public health emergency. He's negotiated and signed a bipartisan legislation to spend $6 billion. That's a lot of money against this danger. There will be prevention programs, ad campaigns. It'll be for treatment. It'll also help us in law enforcement. He wants to improve prevention by launching a nationwide awareness campaign about the dangers of opioids. He set the ambitious goal of reducing opioid prescriptions. And many of the police officers I just met with, they talked about this. And it's important. We want to reduce opioid prescriptions in total by 1/3 in 3 years. That is an ambitious goal. I believe it's possible. It is our goal. We embrace that goal, and we're going to work for it resolutely. He recognizes that law enforcement is also prevention. We're not just locking up criminals to lock up criminals. We're preventing addiction from spreading. We are saving lives by removing drug dealers from our community. That's what is at stake in our work. That is why we are attacking the gangs and the cartels, damaging, weakening, even destroying their distribution networks. So today, I want to announce one good thing, the next steps that we're going to undertake. It's called Operation Synthetic Opioid Surge, or SOS. I am ordering our prosecutors, our United States attorneys in 10 districts with some of the highest overdose death rates, including this one, to systematically and relentlessly prosecute every single synthetic opioid case, fentanyl, carfentanil cases. We can weaken these networks, reduce fentanyl availability, and we can save lives if we're effective in such a goal. We're going to arrest, prosecute, and convict fentanyl dealers. We're going to put them in jail. And when it comes to synthetic opioids, there really is no such thing as a small case. 3 milligrams of fentanyl can be fatal. That's the equivalent of 1 pinch of salt. It's not even enough to cover up Lincoln's face on a penny. Depending on the purity, you could fit more than 1,000 fatal doses of fentanyl in 1 teaspoon. I want to be clear about this. We're not focusing on users, but on those who are supplying them with deadly drugs. We want to go up the chain to attack and dismantle the most serious drug dealers. Manatee County, Florida, that I met with leaders some months ago, shows that a united and determined effort focusing on fentanyl directly and fentanyl dealers can save lives. Your counterparts in the United States Attorney's Office in Middle District of Florida tried this strategy in Manatee County, just south of Tampa. Like many parts of this country, they had experienced massive increases in opioid deaths in 2015 and 2016. In response, they began prosecuting sales of opioids and synthetic opioids. Regardless of the amount, they went after every case. They prosecuted 45 synthetic opioid traffickers, and the deaths started to go down. From the first 6 months, in 2016 to 2017, overdose deaths dropped by 3/4, and overall, the overdose deaths dropped by 77%. This past January, they had less than half as many as the previous January. We've talked here about your situation. I think it'd be unrealistic to assume that we could achieve that much success when you have around and nearby suppliers of large amounts of fentanyl to a degree I don't think they had in Tampa, Florida, if you want to know the truth. But this is the kind of focus that I believe will have positive results. The office there went from responding to 11 overdose calls a day to an average of 1 a day. And I think that's the kind of results we'd like to see more around the country. As you implement this proven strategy, we're going to send some reinforcements. Last month, I sent more than 300 new AUSAs to districts across America, including here, 2. It was the largest prosecutor surge nationwide in decades, maybe ever. We sent people out. We didn't expand in Washington. We sent our new resources out around the country. But today I'm announcing that each of the 10 districts where the drug crisis is worse in America, where the opioid deaths and fentanyl deaths are the highest, will get an additional prosecutor. As a former AUSA and United States Attorney myself, I know what can be done with motivated, talented prosecutors and investigators. And my expectations could not be higher. Our goal is to reduce crime, reduce fentanyl, reduce deaths in this country. We are not going to stand by while deaths continue to go up. I believe this new strategy and these additional prosecutors will have a significant impact. Scott and I talked about it. He's excited about this. And I know that you all are going to work together to achieve good results here. I believe that this is going to build on the new tools that we have given our prosecutors over the past 18 months. One of these tools is the Opioid Fraud and Abuse Detection Unit, a new data analytics program that focuses specifically on opioid-related healthcare fraud, prescription opioids. This sort of data analytics team can tell us important information, like who is prescribing, what doctor is prescribing the most drugs, who is dispensing the most in general, which patients are dying of drug overdose. As part of this initiative, I've assigned a dozen experienced prosecutors to the opioid hotspot districts around the country to focus solely on prosecuting opioid-related diversion of prescription drugs, healthcare fraud. These are achieving really good results already. We've begun J-Code, a new team at the FBI that focuses specifically on the threat of online opioid sales. And if we get to the point where people can just, with impunity, order fentanyl, heroin, cocaine off through the mails, then we've really had a major setback in our effort to protect this country. We're making progress in this. These new tools have helped us deliver results. Since January, we've charged more than January of 17. We've charged more than 200 doctors. Can you believe that? And another 220 other medical personnel for opioid-related crimes. 16 doctors in this country that have been charged by the Department of Justice together prescribed more than 20 million pills illegally. Last summer, we set a record for the largest healthcare fraud enforcement action of a general nature in the history of the country. And just a few weeks ago, we had another healthcare fraud enforcement action that set a new record. We coordinated the efforts of more than 1,000 state and federal law enforcement agents to charge more than 600 defendants, including 76 doctors, with more than $2 billion in healthcare fraud. This was the most doctors, the most medical personnel, and the most fraud that the Department of Justice has ever taken on in any single law enforcement action. This is the most defendants we've ever charged with healthcare fraud. It is also the most opioid-related fraud defendants we've ever charged in a single enforcement action. Almost exactly 1 year ago today, the department announced the seizure of the largest dark net marketplace in history, Alpha Bay. This site for illegal activity hosted some 220,000 drug listings, people who were selling drugs that you could order off those sites, responsible for countless synthetic overdose deaths, including the tragic death of a 13-year-old child. In the first 3 months of 2018, the Drug Enforcement Administration seized a total of more than 200 pounds of suspected fentanyl in cases from Detroit to Boston. Depending on its purity, that could be enough to kill tens of millions of people. In 2017, we tripled the number of fentanyl prosecutions at the federal level. Our efforts are bearing fruit. The DEA's National Prescription Audit shows that the first quarter of 2018, opioid prescriptions went down by nearly 12% in just the first quarter of this year, compared to the first quarter of 2017 when President Trump took office. And we are confident that the decline will be bigger. UTM and DEA have just in the last few days issued another directive that would reduce the number of opioid drugs that can be sold in this country. So we're right to celebrate these accomplishments, but we have to acknowledge there is still a lot of work to do. That's why we're going to keep arming you with the tools you need to keep drugs out of this community. We're going to keep up the pace. We know our mission is difficult. Your mission is difficult, but it is not hopeless. We can make a difference. Together, we can break the vicious cycle of drug abuse, addiction, overdose that have devastated countless American families. And so I want to close by reiterating my deep appreciation and profound thanks to all the men and women of law enforcement, federal, state, local, as well as their families, for sacrificing so much, putting your lives on the line every day so the rest of us may operate and enjoy safety and security. The work you do is essential. I believe it. The Department of Justice believes it. The President believes it. And you can be certain of this. We have your back, and you have our thanks. It's an honor to be with you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and we're going to continue to work with this great state to bring down the deaths that have been occurring as a result of the opioid crisis. Thank you all, and God bless.
Does this look familiar? We're back. Let's see if they'll open. They want evidence? Let's give them evidence. Hello, this is Mike Gill. I got an arm full of evidence that'll put drug dealers in jail and corrupt politicians. Could you open the door, please? I still say they might open it.
Can I help you?
Yes, I have some evidence to drop off.
What kind of evidence?
Well, let me see. We've got the federal audit for the state of New Hampshire that says they're paying illegal vendors. We've got IRS, RICO. We've got drug dealers. And how about this? An attempted murder and a confession from a gentleman that was hired to murder me. Do we have your interest?
Let me see if there's anything else I can speak with you. Hold on, sir.
Well, I told you. You know what the difference is? These bastards don't want to go to jail. And you know why I'm here? To put them in jail. How do you think these drug deals get away with it? From these guys doing nothing. It's a bunch of Bedford cops. They call themselves FBI. Do you remember the DEA? We dropped the package in his hand. What'd they do? They turn around and turn over a tractor-trailer load of fentanyl. Let's see what this gets us. And I'll tell you, if they don't do anything, no problem. We get them too. In fact, at this point, I hope they don't. This is the time they're taking now. Now they're listening, and good. They're going, what the fuck we're gonna do? We don't want to go to jail. Do we open the door? There again, they could come out here, hit me over the head with a fucking club, and the cameraman has instructions to run like a son of a bitch and leave me on the floor. But he takes the camera and the chip with him. Isn't that so, cameraman?
That's true.
I came this close from bringing a lawn chair. Yeah, attempted murder, drugs. Nah.
We're waiting on an inspector. Finally, a couple of decent guys. They actually went and got for help. They didn't reach these guys. All right, keep your fingers crossed. I mean, across this country, keep your fingers crossed.
Have you contacted the U.S. Attorney?
What, New Hampshire?
Yeah.
I just told you. How about this? Everybody you know Mike Gill, then you know I dropped this evidence off to the U.S. Attorney, and they mailed it back. You know why? Because we put the whole thing on video. Okay? Went to the FBI, they mailed it back. You know why? Because it's true.
Well, the thing is, we got to get it to the right place.
We have to go to Washington.
Okay. The U.S. Attorney Office is an entity of the United States Department of Justice. So is the FBI. So
By state level.
No, on the federal level. They all work for the federal government, FBI and the
Right,
U.S. Attorney
but
Office.
these individuals come from the state and are controlled by these individuals. Millions of people have seen what I've said. Listen, this stuff is indisputable. Clay, can you grab that? You're gonna see text messages asking me to murder 3 attorneys in hiding because they're afraid to be murdered. My attorneys. This is how big this is. This drug cartel has corrupted the state, as it has many other states. But I am telling you, they're in the hospitals, they're in the treatment centers. I have witnesses from the treatment centers. They're selling drugs out of the treatment centers. You can't bring this back to the state, which is why I'm in Washington. I need somebody above that.
I understand your frustration, sir, and I understand.
But this isn't frustration, this is corruption. Listen, they're trying to murder me with this.
I'm trying to get you to the right people.
But don't give me the people that everybody here, million people are going to see this, know that I've already been there. And it is true. This computer has the going on between the people inside my company, Bill Shaheen and Alex Walker, to the point where they scheduled my death on that computer. Right. And Bill, you know who Bill Shaheen is? He's the husband of Jean Shaheen, the senator. That's the kind of pull we have. I ran for governor. They tried to murder me. No doubt about it. The guy who ran for senator was my campaign manager. He got leveraged by the drug dealers for $20 million, and he threw the race to get Hassan to win. All through. Listen, I've got 70, 80 witnesses. You pick it. But if you're sending me back to the same people who are corrupt,
I'm trying to get you to the right people.
give it to me in Washington. Who in Washington? Don't send us back to the states. Our state is corrupted. I'm going to Washington, to our capital, go to a next level.
Go to the FBI field office here in Washington, and they might be able to help you.
FBI field office in Washington. Can you get me an appointment?
I can't get you an
Can you
appointment.
help me with a phone call?
I can give you a number to call.
You can't get an appointment because this is the problem. I turn around and say, well, did you have an appointment? These fellows at least went in and get somebody. Normally they don't. It's not that we're not calling.
I'm trying to help you. So you
I
can
know,
get
but we've called 1,000 times.
Okay.
1,000 times and not that help. You know, the world's watching this and they know this evidence. You want to hear it? The guy who's supposed to kill me tells me about how he's going to cut a little girl's head off with a chainsaw. We're only talking about the Greek and the Italian mafia from the highest levels, and they're mentioned by name. Right? I turned down 50 million. If you go to this website, State of Corruption list, you see me turn it down, signed. But what are you paying 50 million for? And then if you don't take it, they tried to murder me 3 times. I had a 6'7" Russian nationalist in Miami on video. So there's no bullshit about this. Can we have some direction with a name? What you're sending us away to is for someone else to go, hey, they got an appointment?
I can't give you a name because each agency and each division dictates who investigate what. So I can't tell you.
So if we're saying drug cartels, we're saying big Senate race, we're saying attempted murder, we got to find an area for that? I mean, it isn't this.
When you saying drug cartels, that could be the FBI, that could be the DEA. Have you tried
Right.
the DEA?
Oh, of course I did the DEA. You're going to love this. I went to the DEA on camera. I gave them the evidence from the hospitals where the drug dump was. Guess what? 3 days later, we had the biggest drug dump in history, 18-wheeler full of fentanyl top to bottom. You know what? The DEA put it back on the street. The DEA knew exactly where that drug was. They knew where that drug was. I told them. They took them out of the hospital. You know what was the hospital? The drug cartel. They own the hospital and the treatment centers.
Who do you want to talk to and what do you want to do?
I want to be able to speak to the FBI, give them this information, and just say, please investigate. Investigate. As long as I have this in someone's hands, listen, they threatened to murder all my children in writing.
You want to talk to the FBI? The FBI headquarters is next building over. I mean, you might be able to talk to somebody there. I can't promise you nothing.
You know what's going to happen? Can you give me how about this?
I can't give you a name.
You
because
can't
I
make a
don't-
phone call and say, listen, this is a gentleman that I met, had some serious information. Could you have an appointment for him to sit down?
I don't know who to call because I don't know who would be
Well,
investigating.
so I'm going to go over there, and we're not going to get in. Let me understand. Is there security all around the building?
I mean, I can't say if you get in or don't get in because I don't do security over there.
So understand this. I have the evidence that'll take down a drug cartel. Do you know New Hampshire is the worst place in America, according to the DEA?
I'm trying to get you in the right direction so you can talk to somebody. I am. You understand what I'm
No, I don't. I don't think you are. You'll be making a phone call. We'll be looking at this evidence. You'll be turning around, calling up and saying, listen, this is what this guy has. We have more people dying in New Hampshire per capita than any place in the country. This is why it's protected. We have a fixed Senate race. Fixed. Next slide. I don't even know how they launder the money. They launder it through the banking departments. By owning the banking department, controlling that, they don't audit the drug banks. The banking department got in. He was a state senator. You know what he passed? One bill. You know what the bill was? You don't have to audit anybody if you trust them. He became the banking commissioner. And they're not auditing those drug banks. I know who they are. I know where they are. So they're not going to help you. All right.
trying to help you, sir.
I am telling you, America's watching this.
Okay, sir.